Okay, we are reading the Anatomy of the Constitution. As you go, you will want to stop this video as you come across each answer, but I will be reading through the entire document. So, Anatomy of the Constitution. How do they govern? The U.S. Constitution is the document that creates our nation's government. The contents in the Constitution create the three branches of government and give the directions for how the federal government works. Although the Constitution was written over 220 years ago, it still guides our officials in running our country today. Creating Congress, Article 1. Article 1 is the first and longest part of the Constitution. It is because the people who wrote the Constitution realized that a legislative branch is very important in a government that represents the citizens. Members of Congress are responsible for turning the wants and needs of people into laws. Represent me. The legislative branch makes our government our representative democracy. It is a representative democracy, a representative democracy, citizens elect people to represent their needs and concerns in Congress. Article 1 tells us that the legislature is divided into two parts, the Senate and the House of Representatives. It describes how Congress should be organized, states the qualifications necessary for a person to serve, and tells how often Congress should hold elections and meet as a group. There are other details that the two houses get to decide for themselves. So, kind of side by side here. The Senate. Qualifications. You must be at least 30 years old, been a United States citizen for at least 9 years, and live in the state that you represent. The size of the Senate is 2 senators per state for a total of about 100. They represent the interests of the citizens in the entire state for 6 years per term, or they represent the people of the state they represent. Special duties. The Senate acts as a court during impeachments, and both the Senate and the House of Representatives, a bill must be approved by both houses of a Congress before it can go to the president to become a law. So that was the Senate. Now looking at the House of Representatives. So qualifications for the House of Representatives, you need to be at least 25 years old and been a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years and live in the state that you represent. The size, the number per state depends on population. In 2011, it was about 435. I think it's a little bit higher now, like 439 or so. The House of Representatives represents the interests of the citizens who live in the district they represent within the state for the 2 years per term. So like each state is broken up into smaller pieces. Special duties, the House of Representatives, all bills that raise money must start in the House of Representatives. And again, both of them, a bill must be approved by both houses of Congress before it can go to the president to become a law. So, what are some things Congress as a whole can do? They can collect taxes, borrow money and pay debts, make rules of how to become a citizen, regulate commerce or trade with other nations and between the states and with Indian tribes. Congress can coin money and punish counterfeiters. Congress can establish the post offices, give patents to new inventions, create the lower federal courts, punish pirates, declare war and support an army and a navy, make any other laws that are necessary and proper to carry out the powers on this list. Next page, Article 2. Article 2 of the Constitution describes the job of the executive branch. The president heads this branch, which includes the vice president, the cabinet, and many civilian and military employees. Article 2 describes who qualifies to be president, what powers the office has, and what happens if a president misbehaves. It also explains the Electoral College, which is the process of how the president is selected. So, presidential powers. Presidents act as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. They maintain a cabinet of advisors or a group of people who run the 14 executive departments, like the State Department and the Treasury. They grant pardons in all federal criminal offenses and reprieves or postpone punishments like executions. Presidents also negotiate treaties with other countries. They appoint ambassadors, Supreme Court justices, and federal court judges, and cabinet members. They make a State of the Union address to Congress. They represent the United States when dealing with foreign countries, and they make sure that laws are carried out or executed. So then, Article 3 is creating the courts. Here come the judges. Article 3 creates the judicial branch. The judicial branch has the job of interpreting laws to decide what they mean. Article 3 is the shortest of the first three articles. This is because it only creates one court, the Supreme Court. All of the other federal courts are created by Congress. Federal judges are appointed and given terms that last until they retire, die, or are removed for bad behavior. Article 3 gives directions about what kinds of cases the Supreme Court and federal courts can hear. It also guarantees trial by jury in criminal court and explains what the crime of treason is. So, this is kind of just a little review. First, match the quote about working in government to the correct branch, then name the article that describes the powers of this branch. So, a floor debate on a bill is an exhilarating experience and an important duty. The presidency has many problems, but boredom is the least of them. And we supply laws to facts. We do not apply feelings to facts. So, as a little review, this one matches the legislative branch because they're talking about the bills. The presidency is going to be the executive branch because that's who is carrying out this. Also, if you see Richard Nixon, he is a president. And then we apply laws to facts. We don't apply feelings, just facts. So that's the judicial branch. And it says justice there, which is kind of a little helper. So then which of these? Legislative is the first article, executive is the second, and judicial is the third. You don't have to do this piece. It's more just a little bonus. Moving on. Article number 4, IV, is the Roman numeral for 4. So the states. We already know that the states have the power to create and enforce their own laws. Article 4 of the Constitution describes how the states should interact with one another. Each state has to respect the laws and court decisions of the other states. If a criminal flees from one state for another, the state where the crime was committed can request the criminal to be returned to face criminal charges. This is called extradition. New states can be admitted to the Union with the authorization of Congress and the President. All states must have a Republican or a representative type of government. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to be a Republican Party. It just, a Republican is a representative form of government. Amending the Constitution, if I circle back to this, this is saying each state has to have a representative government. So the government as a whole is a representative democracy. Each state kind of can set it up how they want their government, but it does have to be some sort of representative form of a government. Article number 5, or V, that's the Roman numeral for 5. This article describes what has to be done to amend the Constitution. You'll read more about this process on the next page. Supreme law of the land. Federalism is the idea that the national government shares powers with the state governments. But what happens if a state law disagrees with a national or federal law? Article 6 states that the laws and treaties of the U.S. government are the supreme law of the land. If a state disagrees with a federal law wins. This article also requires officials working in the state and federal governments to take an oath to support the Constitution, no matter what. And the last one is ratification. Once most of the Constitution was written, the framers had to decide the best way to get the American people to support it. Article 7 calls for at least 9 of 13 states to ratify or approve the Constitution. Each state had to hold a constitutional convention to discuss and vote on the new government plan. The biggest debate was over the need for a Bill of Rights that would list specific rights not already mentioned in the Constitution. Eventually, the Bill of Rights was added as the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and the Constitution became the law of the land in March 1789. So, amending the Constitution. Article 5 describes how an amendment is added to the Constitution. There are only 2 steps necessary. First, the amendment needs to be proposed or introduced. Then it needs to be ratified or passed. Sounds easy? Well, it isn't. Hundreds of amendment proposals are introduced in Congress each year. Only 33 have gotten enough votes to be actually proposed. Of those, 27 become amendments to the Constitution. The process to add an amendment can take years. There are 4 different ways an amendment can be added to the Constitution, but in all cases, an amendment has to be approved at state and national levels. So, first, there needs to be a proposal. Either Congress or the states can propose an amendment to the Constitution. Both houses of Congress must propose the amendment with a 2/3 vote. This is how all current amendments have been offered. The other option is to have 2/3 of the state legislators call on Congress to hold a constitutional convention. So far, no amendments have been proposed in this way. Step 2. Regardless of how the government or the amendment is proposed, it must be ratified by the states. 3/4 of the state legislatures must approve of the amendment proposed by Congress. The alternative is to have 3/4 of the states approve the amendment by holding conventions to vote on it. The state convention method has only been used once to approve the 21st Amendment repealing prohibition in 1933. So, step 1, a vote. A 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress to propose, or 2/3 of the state legislatures act for a meeting to propose the amendment. That's called a convention. The amendment is proposed at the national convention. Step 2, ratify. 3/4 of state legislators ratify the amendment, or 3/4 of special state conventions ratify the amendment. And then, the new amendment is added to the Constitution. Now, a way to help remember all of these. So we've got Article 1. So we've got our 7 articles. Now, if we remember back, our first article is Congress or a legislative branch. The second one was creating the president or the executive branch. And the third one created the courts or the judicial branch. A way to help remember all of these is we've got LEJ. It's not leg, it's ledge. So that's a way to help remember those 3. Article 4 is the states and how the states interact with each other. What I always think of here is the states. There's the 4 corners where we've got Colorado, we've got Utah, we've got New Mexico, and Arizona. I always think back to these guys because they're kind of the 4 corners. It's our states, and it's like our 4 corners of our states that we have here. So it's just kind of a little memory that if we've got 4 corners, we've got 4 states, and it's Article 4. Article 5 is amending the Constitution. Oops. The word amend. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 5 letters. Article 6. The supreme law of the land. The supreme law of the land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at that. There's 6 words. And then the last one, it's our last piece, ratification. And it's the end. So just a little way to help remember which article is which. Finish up this assignment, get it turned in. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.